Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the Zohar's really intricate cosmology to get our heads around a pretty challenging idea: how the very process of creation, how it generates its own toxic byproducts and what that actually means for our reality.
So, our whole journey starts with this one cryptic phrase from the Zohar: when conflict awakens in the strength of the left. I mean, that one line, it's the spark that ignites this massive cosmic process with just unbelievable consequences. It's describing a moment, right at the beginning, in the blueprint of reality, where a fundamental force wakes up with so much intensity that it literally rips a hole in the system. It creates a conflict within creation itself.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. A primordial force, the left side of creation, awakening in its full, raw, untempered power. Now, the Zohar is clear. This isn't evil. This is a fundamental building block of reality. It's the power of din, of judgment. Picture it as this molten, red, contracting force. It's pure, it's undiluted, and it holds this immense potential. But in its raw state, it's completely overwhelming.
So this raw, unchecked energy, it can't just integrate smoothly into the fabric of existence. The excess, kind of like slag that separates from molten metal, it hardens. It congeals into what the mystics call Klipot, spiritual shells. And these are the very first byproduct of this imbalance, the residue that's left over when this pure force can't be contained or integrated. This is the origin story of external negative forces, a hardened dross from an unresolved cosmic fight.
And in this process, something incredibly precious gets lost. Sparks of divine light, actual fragments of holiness, they fall and get trapped inside these very shells. They just tumble down into the spiritual chasm where you see these distorted, shadowy forms begin to take shape, and they're fed by the very light they've captured. This abyss, this whole external reality made of pure, untempered judgment, this is the origin of what the sources call Gehinnom. So to really understand how this cosmic fallout even happens, we need to break this whole thing down, right from the top.
Okay, so we're going to break this journey into 5 parts. First, we'll look at that initial conflict. Then, the mechanics of how things get so imbalanced. After that, we'll examine the byproducts it creates, the spiritual abyss that results from it all, and finally, this is the cool part, we're going to reframe the whole process to figure out if there's a purpose to all this mess.
All right, let's start with the absolute fundamentals of the spiritual worlds. Kabbalah tells us there's a blueprint, and it's built on 3 pillars, or 3 lines. You can think of them as the primary vectors of divine energy that build literally everything in reality. So, how does creation actually work? Well, it all runs on this dynamic tension. On one side, you've got the right line, this expansive, giving force of Chesed, or kindness. And on the other side, you've got the left line, this contracting, restrictive force of Gevurah, or din, judgment. But here's the thing about the left line. It's not just about limitation. It carries the most brilliant light of all, the light of wisdom. So what do you think happens when this incredibly powerful force shows up in its full, raw strength? Well, that's exactly where the conflict begins. And our source for this, the Baal HaSalam's commentary on the Zohar, he explains that these 2 forces, at first, they're just completely incompatible. They're in this state of total opposition. The right, being the root of the whole structure, it wants to just absorb and cancel out the left. But the left, carrying that superior light of wisdom, it actually has the power to just overwhelm the right. So you get this cosmic stalemate where neither force can do its job. And that standoff? That's what the Zohar calls machloket, or conflict.
Now this is where we really get into the physics of this spiritual reality. Why does this conflict even happen, and what does it actually produce? Because this isn't about some kind of moral failure. It's a mechanical one. It's actually a necessary step in a super complex process of creation. So it works like this. The left line emerges, and it's carrying this brilliant light of wisdom. But this light, in its raw state, it's just pure reception. It's like raw data without any context or application. It needs a vessel, or you could say a garment, of the light of kindness from the right side to even be usable. Without that garment, the intensity of the wisdom is so massive that it just repels the kindness. And the kindness, without the light of wisdom to give it form, it's just pure potential. So here's the crucial point. This overload isn't a flaw. It's actually an intentional phase, designed to force the creation of a third mediating principle, the middle line, which weaves them together. But before that can happen, waste gets produced.
Okay, to make this a little more concrete, let's use a modern analogy. Think of the left side's raw judgment as the pure processing power of a supercomputer's CPU, and the right side's kindness, that's the operating system, the framework that gives all that power a purpose and a structure. Now, what happens if you run that CPU at full throttle without the OS to manage it? The system doesn't just get faster, it overheats, it crashes, and it starts spitting out corrupted data, fragmented files, even malicious processes. Well, in the cosmic system, those corrupted files are the spiritual waste products, the peshilit.
So this system overload, this moment of pure, untempered judgment, it generates really specific kinds of spiritual impurity. And this right here is the sod, the deep secret of how negativity, separation, and what we might call evil even enters the world. It's not some invading force from outside creation, it's a byproduct from within. Let's take a look at them one by one.
First and foremost, you have the Klipot, the shells. These are the direct result of that intense judgment just solidifying. You could think of them as the corrupted file containers. They form this outer, opaque reality that does two things. It hides the holiness that it's captured, and at the same time, it feeds off its energy. This is the very structure of what's called the other side, the Sitra Achra.
Next up, we have a really specific kind of klipa called Orla. Now, don't just think of it as a shell. Think of it more like a corrupted USB port on your computer. It's a specific spiritual blockage that acts as an interface, allowing these external impure forces to literally plug into the system, draw energy from it, and block the flow of life-giving power.
And finally, we get the internal consequence, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Now, this is not some external demon with a pitchfork, okay? It is the manifestation of this huge cosmic imbalance inside of us. It's that internal pull we feel toward the raw, unmitigated judgment of the left side, that drive for separation, for self-interest without thinking about the whole. And right here, the Book of Grace to Abraham reveals a truly shocking secret. The Yetzer Hara and Gehinnom, they're essentially the same force. One is just its internal expression, the other is its external reality.
So, what happens when all these byproducts, the hardened Klipot, the fallen sparks of holiness they've trapped, all that raw, chaotic energy from the unresolved conflict, when all of this spiritual fallout comes together, it doesn't just float around in a void. No, it forms an entire dimension. It creates a coherent reality that's built on one principle: pure, unfiltered judgment. And this is the realm of Gehinnom. You see, as the Zohar says, Gehinnom isn't some place of punishment that was created later on to deal with sinners. Not at all. It's a direct, mechanical consequence of that primordial darkness, the raw power of the left side, awakening in its full strength. It is the natural destination for any consciousness, any soul, that attaches itself to that unbalanced force, because it's literally made of the exact same stuff.
And our sources describe Gehinnom as way more than just a simple pit of fire. It's a complex spiritual dimension. It has gates, interfaces with our world where its influence can flow through. It's the home of these chaotic forces, the mazikin, or harmful entities, which the Book of Grace to Abraham and Pardes Ramonim say are created from this same spiritual fallout, and sometimes they even take on tangible forms in our world, like dogs or goats. The Talmudic sages said that the entire world is like a pot cover for Gehinnom, which is a wild thing to say. It means that this spiritual reality is so vast that our entire universe is basically just a lid on its opening.
So where does all this leave us? I mean, it's pretty easy to look at this whole process and see it as a huge flaw in creation, right? But the mystics, they insist it's not a mistake. And to understand its purpose, we're going to reframe the whole problem using two modern analogies.
First up, the video game analogy. Imagine reality is a divine game engine. That initial conflict between left and right, it created a persistent glitch in the game's physics. And from these unstable, glitchy zones, enemy mobs and corrupted characters, the Klipot and Mazikin, they just keep spawning. Gehinnom in this model is the ultimate corrupted zone, like a high-level dungeon of pure negative energy. And the player? Well, that's the soul. Our mission is to go into these glitched areas, to engage with these negative forces, not just to destroy them, but to defeat them in a way that lets us reclaim the light or the loot that they've been hoarding, those fallen holy sparks. And by doing that, we are literally patching the game's code from the inside, just by making our choices.
Or we can look at it from a cosmic engineering perspective. Imagine creation is this incredibly sophisticated, self-correcting energy grid. When a powerful new generator, the light of wisdom, comes online, there's an unavoidable initial system overload. It just happens. And this generates harmful byproducts, waste heat, corrupted energy streams. and these form the reality of the Klipot and Gehinnom. So in this model, nothing is truly evil. It's just waste energy that hasn't been properly reintegrated yet. The solution? That's the middle line, the cosmic regulation system. And our actions, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, they act as the catalysts that decide what happens. We can either add more pollution to the system, or we can actively participate in this cosmic recycling program, purifying that waste energy and returning it to the grid.
And this brings us to the ultimate paradox of the entire system. The source of the problem is conflict, mochleket. In the Zohar, which is echoed in Pardes Ramonim, it makes a distinction between two types of conflict. There's a destructive conflict, like that of Korach, which is an argument just for the sake of tearing things down. That kind of conflict, it feeds directly into that abyss of Gehinnom. But then there's a constructive conflict, a conflict for the sake of heaven, like the famous debates between the schools of Hillel and Shammai. This is the dynamic tension between left and right when it's successfully mediated by the middle line. This constructive conflict is what builds the world. The very source of the problem becomes the engine of creation. And even more amazing, the sources allude to a secret that deep within the heart of pure deen, of pure judgment, there's a hidden reference to the number 18, the numerical value of chai, life. And this points to the 18 blessings of the daily prayer, the force of Chesed, of kindness that ultimately builds our world.
Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share. Which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments? We'll see you in the next chapter.